Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tezenghausen. Today is July 13th. Here are the main news stories at this moment. An oil depot in the Stavropol region is burning after a nighttime attack. This is yet another oil depot, but an important one. The settlement is Mikhailovsk, and it seems that the south of Russia is being very thoroughly cleared not only of refineries, but also of oil depots. It's burning beautifully, just the way you like it. Let's take a look. Beautiful. Of course, the local residents immediately filmed content and posted it on social media. Meanwhile, the governor started saying that it was just some debris again, that something fell in an industrial area. In general, everything is as usual. By the way, this is the second oil depot in this small settlement to be attacked in the past week. There's another one literally a kilometer away from it. It was hit on July 9th, so it's being done very, very thoroughly. The south of Russia is being cleared of oil depots and refineries. But that's not all. 15 ships overnight in the Sea of Azov. So, Russians, do you understand what's happening? Their shadow fleet ended up in the Sea of Azov. It's simply been blocked, but they still stubbornly keep filling those tankers with fuel and sending them to Crimea. Let's take the best of the best. There are none left, so let's take the worst of the worst. Those who are crooked, lame, damaged, let's send them all to Crimea. They're completely out of their minds. 105 ships in 8 days. And the operation is ongoing. So, last night in the Sea of Azov, our drones hit 7 tankers, 5 cargo ships, 1 ferry, and 2 tugboats. Well, the transshipment infrastructure of the occupied Crimea got its share too. The ferries are still burning, traffic through the Kerch Strait has been suspended, and the volume of cargo transshipment there has been reduced to an absolute minimum. In addition, 9 energy facilities were hit in occupied Crimea last night. These are substations of various capacities, including a really major one. The target was a strategic point for the transfer of electricity on the Cuban Crimea energy bridge. This strategic point, known as Crimea, was attacked for the second time in 48 hours. But that's not all yet. The cherry on top, the real cherry on the cake. 4 elements of the Russian air defense system in Crimea were destroyed. Today, a S-400 Triumph launcher, a Tor anti-aircraft missile system, and 2 radar complexes. And the destruction of air defense systems in Crimea is a crucial moment, and today news has just emerged as a consequence of this destruction. Last night there was a massive shelling in the area of Armyansk in occupied Crimea. The target of the shelling was a huge semi-underground logistics hub, which consists of various command posts, warehouses, and other important facilities for the Russians. But since it was buried, located partially underground, our forces used bombs. But not only bombs, though bombs were used as well. In other words, a large number of bombs were dropped on this facility. This is Armyansk, occupied Crimea. Just a year ago, why am I bringing up air defense? Such an operation would have been simply impossible. But now, the Russian air defense in that direction has been cleared out, and the operation was successful. They promised to show a video soon. I think I'll show it to you in tomorrow's episode. But that's not what I'm talking about here at all. That is, the air defense in Crimea is being systematically destroyed, and every day several units are taken out. There's simply nothing to replace them with. Physically, this means that every day several important components are knocked out. It's all interconnected, meaning these aren't just isolated elements. It's all tied into a single network. This is air defense, meaning that if it's already possible to carry out drops over Armyansk, then the Crimean Isthmus is already, well, it's weakly covered, let's be honest. This means that for the Russians in Crimea itself, the situation will significantly worsen in the very near future. How are you doing there, occupiers, without electricity, without fuel, and now also without air defense? In short, retribution is coming. Essentially, our troops now have the ability not just to occasionally break through the Crimean air defenses, but to operate for a fairly long time and freely, particularly over the Crimean Isthmus. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's important. You can do it right now without putting it off. We are fighting against Putin's propaganda, and together it will be much easier for us. It will be much simpler and more effective to do this together. So make sure to subscribe. And let me remind you that Armyansk is the northern gateway to Crimea, that is, through this area pass, or rather used to pass, roads, communications, and supply routes. Earlier, Our fighters had already destroyed the bridges and crossings at the entrance to Crimea, right there from the north. Meanwhile, the Russians have built new crossings, but they don't help much. That is, our forces have zeroed in, and movement of heavy vehicles through these crossings in the area of Armyansk, Chonhar, and Henichesk is now seriously restricted. Now, they could be completely closed off altogether. So, let's be honest, the throughput capacity of these embankment and pontoon crossings is much lower than that of permanent bridges. And they've all already been targeted. The locations are known, the coordinates are available. Closer, closer, closer. Soon the Russian southern grouping could really be cut off. They'll have to retreat to Crimea. Where else can they go? Only to Crimea. Well, Ukraine and Ukrainians are truly performing a heroic feat, despite the numerical superiority of the Russians, their advantage in equipment, and despite the fact that this entire monstrous army has missiles and drones. In short, our forces keep pushing, pushing, and pushing because they are fighting for their own land, for their own future. In every episode, we have an important fundraiser for the defense forces of Ukraine. We are continuing to raise funds for a pickup truck for the fighters of the tank battalion of the 31st Separate Mechanized Brigade. Unfortunately, their vehicle was recently destroyed, and now they are in urgent need of a new pickup truck. Let's help them. The fighters have recorded a video message for you. Please take a look.
Бажаю здоров'я. Ми бійці відділення Церберу з 31-ї МБР разом з Борисом Тізенхаузеном та 24-м каналом відкрили збір на автомобіль, який допоможе в виконанні наших бойових задач. Долучайтесь, разом ми сила. Слава Україні! Героям слава!
Let's support our fighters. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There are options for Monobank, Private Bank, and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. There's always a QR code in the corner. That's if you're watching on another channel. It also leads to the fundraiser. And remember, your donation directly saves the lives of our defenders. Thank you so much for supporting Ukraine and our fighters. A little more about Crimea. I was born in Crimea, so this topic is quite close to me. The consequences for Russia go far beyond the Armenian issue, beyond what happened. That is, the weakening of air defense on the isthmus, I think it goes without saying, opens the way for systematic targeting of convoys, fuel tankers, and depots, which are concentrated right there in the north. Crimea is not only an occupied territory, but also a rear base for all those troops, those ghouls in the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia directions, so it will be only worse. And the air defense in Crimea is not just taking losses, it's losing its connectivity. That is, when these elements are knocked out, it disappears. This unified detection and control system. Even the surviving systems turn into isolated islands of defense, between which increasingly wide corridors open up for Ukrainian strikes. That is, today drones are taking apart the air defense over Armyansk, tomorrow over Jankoy. And the day after tomorrow, it will be over Sevastopol. Putin's worst nightmare is coming true. Russia is gradually losing control of the skies over Crimea. Of course, it's clear that the entire air defense system in Crimea won't collapse overnight, but the trend is obvious. And today I came across some news. Well, these are just chronicles, of the war of the future, I would say, but really these are chronicles of modern warfare. Recently, the Russians claimed that they repelled an attack by ground robotic complexes in one of the directions. So, according to the Russians, they were attacked only by ground robotic complexes, GRCs. They were moving with turrets, grenade launchers, and some other equipment, and the Russians say we fought them off. But today the news is even more unique. Servicemen of the 123rd Separate Territorial Defense Brigade successfully carried out an absolutely innovative special operation. As part of this mission, the ground robotic complex was delivered to the occupied Kinburn Spit using an unmanned maritime platform. In other words, one drone delivered another drone. After landing, the GRC with a turret was deployed to carry out a combat mission and started taking out Russians there. It's simply incredible. So this is the first known combat operation of this kind, of this format. Until recently, one drone delivers another, and then that one goes off, drives off, to be precise. Not long ago, scenes like this probably only existed in science or some kind of science fiction movies. Today, this is what real war looks like. The era of warfare with robotic systems is beginning. Well, how is it beginning? It has already begun. Victory will not go to the one with more soldiers. That's a note for the bald one and the lice-ridden, the one who is faster. At implementing technology, at integrating different types of unmanned platforms into a unified combat control system. But Putin, like an old mothballed underground worm, still hopes for some kind of mobilization, thinking he can probably turn the tide of the war if he gathers 100, 200, or 300,000 poorly motivated Russians. But even Russian military bloggers are already saying that all this cannon fodder will simply be torn apart for spare parts. Ukrainian drones. In other words, these will be the fastest and most ingloriously killed Russians in this war. I think their families won't receive any payments either. The Russian budget hasn't been ready for this for a long time. Like in that famous computer game, the treasury is empty, my lord. But really, the Terminator scenario no longer seems like science fiction to me. Remember how it all started there? You know, artificial intelligence, Skynet, it gets out of control, or more precisely, gains full control over the US defense system. Well, they entrusted it, it became self-aware, and decided that humanity is actually a threat. Well, in a way, it was right. And so, when people tried to shut Skynet down, what did Skynet do? It started a nuclear war. And by the way, it actually did something very, well, in my opinion, you could probably agree with it here. In Terminator, Skynet started the nuclear war. It began by launching a strike with nuclear weapons at Russia. After that, in that sci-fi movie, the Russians, well, nothing had rusted for them. They responded, meaning with nukes against the US and other countries, and then it all began. Skynet started building factories where machines made other machines to exterminate the survivors, and as they say, the machines rose up. Out of the ashes of nuclear war began the war to annihilate humanity. He only spoke with a different voice, kind of clipped, you probably remember. So that's how it was. Doesn't seem like science fiction anymore, does it? I'm reading the news. Today, Putin awarded cosmonaut Peskov the title of Honored Pilot Cosmonaut. Well, finally, I thought that mustachioed scoundrel has been given the appropriate cosmonaut title. Otherwise, he's always flying off into space, just like that, staring wide-eyed and drifting off into space. But it turns out this is something else. They actually have a cosmonaut named Peskov. So, the mustachioed guy wasn't so lucky this time. Meanwhile, Putin is quietly starting to escalate the situation against European countries that are helping Ukraine. Europe has officially accused Russia of a large-scale cyber campaign. Today, France and Germany summoned the Russian ambassadors over a series of cyberattacks, espionage, and attempts at sabotage against European states. At the same time, the European Union imposed sanctions against 9 individuals and 4 organizations. These are connected to a network of state-run and state-controlled Russian hacker groups. That is, in recent days, at least 10 countries have become targets of the Russian cyber campaign, including France, Germany, Poland, and the Netherlands. The targets included government agencies, industrial enterprises, energy companies, and transportation infrastructure. In other words, it was quite a massive attack. Well, against those countries involved in supporting Ukraine. Who is behind these attacks, according to investigations by European journalists? One of the key organizers, according to European intelligence services, is the 16th Center of the Russian FSB. This is a division for radioelectronic intelligence and cyber operations. The activities of the Turla Group, as well as those known as Snake, are linked to this 16th Center. And Turla, also known as Ouroboros, is considered one of the most experienced Russian hacker groups. It has been active for many years, specializing not in those, flashy website hacks. Instead, it focuses on covert infiltration of government and military networks. At the same time, cyber units of the Russian GRU are also operating. Military Unit 29155. The British claim that it cooperates with criminal hackers and the company Impulse, which recruits specialists and students from Russian technical universities for conducting operations abroad. In other words, Russia essentially uses a multi-layered structure. Official FSB and GRU units manage the operations, while part of the work is seemingly handed over to formally independent groups. In reality, as we both know perfectly well, they are completely dependent on the Russian special services. It's important to remember here that Putin began to escalate the situation. That is, he moved from just cyberattacks to cyberattacks that could result in casualties. Here it's important to recall the attempt to shut down electricity in Poland at the end of last year. This is perhaps the most dangerous episode, an attack on Poland's energy system. The UK and EU countries linked this specifically to the FSB's 16th center. More than 30 energy infrastructure facilities were attacked. More than 30 energy infrastructure facilities. The attack did not achieve its goal, but if it had succeeded, about 500,000 people could have been left without electricity. So here we're no longer talking about hacking a European politician's email or stealing some correspondence. This is specifically about an attempt to cause physical consequences by interfering with critical infrastructure. And this is not the first case, and unfortunately it won't be the last. Remember, there were attempts to interfere with railway infrastructure, attempts when villains hired by Russian special services sent powder by mail that later ignited in postal terminals. In other words, that was just a warm-up. It could later ignite even in postal liners, and then there would have been casualties. So up until now, Russia has been acting below the threshold, without casualties. But there is a sense that the Botox jellyfish has decided to raise the stakes. And the next stage is a possible attack on Poland, and Polish special services have already been warned by their European colleagues. Let's see if Putin will dare. Well, in general, it's clear that a balding rat, cornered, is capable of one last leap. Ukraine has shown the whole world that you can not only fight Russia, but with the right approach you can win and even leave this giant gas station country without any fuel. That is, to strike directly at their military wallet. That's why he's furious about it. This, grandpa with the face of a grandma in the Kremlin dungeons. And in the fuel wastelands, there's hysteria because of this news as well. Germany will finance the purchase of 50,000 strike drones for Ukraine. Reuters reports this, citing its sources. According to Reuters, this order is one of the largest known drone purchases for Ukraine. That is, the order includes FPV drones, which will be produced by a Ukrainian company, but will be equipped with software from an American company for autonomous tracking and striking of moving targets. In short, the cleansing of the fuel wastelands is on the horizon. And I told you, it will only get worse for the Russians no matter how many meetings Putin holds. No matter how much he pounds his little fist, no matter how much he spins on his 7-centimeter heels, he can't do anything about it. That's how it is. And you, friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, subscribe to this channel. Don't forget, I ask you very much, let's help our tank battalion fighters. The link to donate is in the description of this video. Our help, yours and mine. They really need it right now. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.